Hello, friends. Whoa. Hello, hello. Can I have everybody's attention? Everybody's attention. Some people's attention. There we go. Lights. That helps. I like that. All right, let's take a seat. Find a place, take your coat off, grab your last drink or slice. There's a whole row in the front here for those of you that are brave enough. Oh, that's not a clicker. That was good. That was quick. Thank you. Welcome. I'm Jacob, Executive Director of the New York Robotics Network, which is a big and upcoming and, as you can see, growing entity here in the tri-state area. We have lots to talk about, lots to share, and lots to get into with our panel. But first, the exciting part of what we're doing tonight is this is the first of a panel series that we'll be presenting, focusing on all of the things that are happening within the robotics and automation within the region. Tonight, we're exploring the future of robotics, and we will then go on to future panels going into very specific kind of industry verticals. I won't get into what that means just yet, but it will be exciting as we get down the road, so pay attention to more of these. Lots of other things to come as we go. But before we do that, I need to know what you want. Everybody take out your phone, take a picture. We'll do it again at the end. Save the link. It's a Google form. It's not that pretty, but it's important for us to understand what the community wants, who's doing what, who you are, and what we can do for you. A couple stragglers, last one, too late. What we are doing, there's a lot of things that we're doing in regards to these events. We've been doing meetups traditionally. Now this is kind of the first of the panels. Started doing a little bit of happy hours and networking and people getting together, and that's what's really important. We're also working and starting to do a lot of workforce and economic development, working with academic partners to kind of bring light to what's happening on all of the research, as well as all the opportunities for creating companies, interning, finding jobs. All that stuff is really important. Yeah, with that, there's a lot of new faces here tonight. Raise your hand if you're a student. It's pretty good. For those of you that have your hand up, or put your hand down if you're not looking for a job. So pay attention to those. All right, put your hands down. Let's do who works for a robotics company or startup. Oh, that's even better. Okay. Keep your hand up if you're hiring. Keep everybody that was had their hands up before. Look around. All right. Make sure you find those people that have their hands up right now afterwards so you can have that conversation. Lastly, VCs, investors, all the things that we need to do to make the world here grow and be more important. So this is how it's kind of, I'm doing the welcome. We're going to get into a panel discussion. We'll do some Q&A after the panel is over. For the Q&A, we're going to put a microphone down the middle, line up in order to do your questions. We're not going to do the game where we run around with a microphone to people. Time depending, we'll do community announcements after that. I've had a lot of people ask me to do a community announcement, so I think we will just do it regardless. And those of you that want to stay late, will stay late. And then we'll clean up, say goodbye, do some networking. For those of you that had your hand up, find a job, so on and so forth. Before we do that, we really have to put a big thank you to Cybernetix. Do a little clap. Thank you. And to Kendall. Kendall, stand up. Kendall is part of the Cybernetix team here in New York. Cybernetix is a venture firm focused specifically within robotics on a global scale, helping to invest in the future of everything that's robotics. And they've been really important with what we're doing here, and in particular with the event tonight. One of the other things that Cybernetix does, which I think is really important, is the Robotics Invest event. It's a summit about robotics investment, bringing together the top people, the who's who of robotics, for a few days of really exciting conversations, one-on-one exploration, all the things that you need to do. It is an invite-only event, so another QR code to scan, and submit your invite. I want as many of you that are in this room today to submit an application to invite so that we can convince them that there's such a movement happening here in New York that they will host this event in New York next year. Okay? Deal? All right. With that, we have a panel to take, and I don't want to interrupt from that any further. Really excited to have this great group of folks together, moderated by Brian Heater, the hardware editor at TechCrunch, Dr. Jacqueline Libby, just Jackie, right? Assistant professor at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, Fady Saad from Cybernetix, we just talked about, and Eric Litman, founder and CEO of Aescape. With that, I'll invite all of them to the stage.
Thank you. If you do want to see Jacob run up and down with a microphone next time, then fill out the QR code. I'm going to work out. Thank you for putting this on. This is amazing. We've been talking about this for a little while. One of the nice things about my job is I get to travel quite a bit, and I've spent some time in Boston, Pittsburgh, a lot of time in San Francisco. And I've always admired what they've been able to do for their robotics community. You've got, the Pittsburgh Robotics Network, Silicon Valley Robotics. If you've ever been out to Boston, the Mass Robotics office is really incredible. There's a lot of companies out there. Actually, in a lot of ways, it's pretty similar to what we have here. So exciting that this is happening. I've been in New York for close to 20 years at this point. I've been covering hardware technology for roughly that long as well. And I don't know a lot of robotics companies, and that is probably local robotics companies, and that's probably to a certain extent on me. But I also think that because we don't have a body like this bringing folks together, that's also it as well. It's going to be really interesting digging into what's unique about the area, what New York and the greater Tri-City area actually brings to the table, how it's different from existing markets as well. Before we really get into it, I do want to talk a little bit about when we were putting this panel together. As Jacob alluded to, we were having a conversation around continuing to do panels going forward, focusing on some of the verticals. But for this one, I think we wanted to really cast as wide a net as possible. And that's going to be the both exciting thing and the challenge of this conversation is everybody is coming to the table from a very different part of the robotics world. I'm going to go down. I planned on talking to Jackie first, so I'm going to pick on you first, even though you're in the middle. If you could talk a little bit about your work, about what you're doing on the research front.
Okay, so I'm in academia. I'm at Stevens, and I was at Carnegie Mellon for my PhD in the Robotics Institute, and then I did my postdoc at NYU. So during my PhD, I was doing a lot of machine learning for field robotics applications. So that's robotics in the field, outside of the lab, where you're dealing with a lot of uncertain environments. Then in my postdoc, I transitioned over into the medical and rehabilitation space, which is what I plan to do moving forward with my career. And now at Stevens, I just started as an assistant professor there this academic year, and I'm running the Robotic Systems for Health lab, where we'll be focusing on soft robotics and hybrid soft-hard robotics for physical human-robot interaction in the medical domain. So I can go more into what that means.
Yeah, we will. We have a clip we can show in a bit too, so we'll dive back into that in a second. Oh, is he? Okay, well, we're looking at it now, so go for it.
It's an example of a soft actuator that's mobilizing a wrist. And here are just some of our soft actuators. They're fabricated from silicone and textiles. And we're also doing some simulations of them where we can simulate the bending of them to like 96% accuracy.
Is that pneumatic? Is that how?
Yeah, pneumatic. And then we have fabrication. We do the full pipeline of fabrication, modeling, testing, and robotic perception and control. Here we just see some of my students in the fabrication process. Here's a pneumatically actuated soft actuator. We have this one can move very, very fast, so that's in real time, that's not sped up. And so we're trying to just look at different, so I'm moving forward, I'm very interested in design optimization for various metrics such as speed, weight, efficiency, as well as customizing to the human body. And I think with soft robotics, it's kind of working in the area of continuum robotics, and there's a lot of room for interesting AI and machine learning questions there. So machine learning for design optimization, as well as machine learning for controls, are two areas that I'm interested in.
Yeah, so what we're looking at right here, to me, it looks like an assistive sort of soft robotic
right.
exoskeleton.
Yeah, so it's a very early prototype of a single degree of freedom soft actuator trying to mobilize a wrist joint. And so the idea is we would build soft exoskeletons, which you might call an exosuit, that would be used to mobilize all the degrees of freedom of the wrist and the hand or other parts of the human body. And then the question is, how do you actuate them in such a way that they're optimized for that mobilization?
Yeah, I have a lot more questions, but we do need to move on. So I'll ask you one more. We talked about this a little bit previously, but it seems like as we're looking at these, that a lot of these are biologically inspired. Is that fair to say?
I actually, they're just, this one is actually what's called a pneumatic network, which is just one of the most fundamental types of soft actuators that are developed. And so we just use this as a prototype because starting during my postdoc, I was new to soft robotics. So this is just one of many, many shapes it could take. I mean, I think it tends to look biological because it's soft, the same way that human tissue is soft. Whether or not it's being inspired by biology, I think is a gray area.
Sure. All right, Fady, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. So Cybernetix, we are early stage VC fund. We're trying to fill the gap in early stage investment in robotics. So we come in as early as pre-seed or seed, and we like to support our companies until they are at the A stage. We are very disciplined in terms of verticals we focus on. We're mainly looking at robotics and automation applications in manufacturing, logistics, construction, and healthcare. So there is lots of follow-up that we need to do. So this is what we have been doing. We invested in 13 companies between the US and Europe. We have investment in Germany, in Switzerland, in the UK, and all across the US, East Coast, Texas, California. We're very kind of bullish about the space. I originally, before being in the VC, I was into the innovation ecosystem. As Brian mentioned, I co-founded Mass Robotics back in 2014. So have been heavily engaged into the whole kind of robotics ecosystem, have seen all the challenges, all the opportunities, and the dynamics between corporate startups and investors and academia too. And before that, I was in academia. I was in large corporates and got my share of like starting companies. Some of them failed, some of them succeeded. But it's very exciting to be here today and have a discussion, and lots of familiar faces. So I'm excited.
I want to talk to you after this and see how the conversations with you change once people know who you are and what you do in this space. Eric, we took a look at Jackie's video, so I think it's only fair that we take a look at the one that you brought. If you can walk us through what we're seeing.
Sure, we can kick off with the video. I guess we're just that's not my video.
Oh, well, that's your homework assignment. Tell us about what we just saw.
I'll work on that next.
Yeah. Tell it. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Right before we start the video, if you don't mind. So I started my company back in 2017, and the words robotics community were not something you would have applied to New York City back then. So it's pretty awesome to see a crowd of this many here. So many people focused on building, innovating, even just being robotics curious in this city. Delightful. Quick intro, Eric. I run a company called Aescape, lifestyle robotics company focused on building robots for better living. Our first application is we have fully automated massage therapy. It feels great. You should try it. Let's take a look.
Oh, you got a robot for that. Can you walk us through what we're looking at here?
So What we're seeing here are the end effectors of the robots. We call them air points, coming in contact with what appears to be a very well-toned body, wearing the compression clothing that we use to manage friction.
Are you saying that because it's you in the video? Is that?
That was a model. That was a very short clip. Do we have a longer
We
clip
do
here?
have a longer clip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, there we go. This is the clip I thought it was going to be. So the experience is designed to fit into all the places where you might find massage therapy. So picture a gym, a spa, a hotel, a corporate office, a sports team, maybe your apartment building, maybe a rehab center. The system itself creates a 3D model of your body, uses that to then inform a treatment plan that you define. You say, I want to feel great today. I don't know what that means. Just help me with that. And you get on the table and you have a number of opportunities to define specifically how that gets even more unique to you. Or maybe you have that one nagging spot in your shoulder that just desperately needs the attention of an elbow for an hour. You can come in and do that as well. It remembers you, so no matter where you may show up, you could be at a local Equinox, at the W in South Beach, at your corporate office amenity. You get the treatment that knows your body, learns from you, is never going to have a bad conversation. It's never going to come back from lunch a little too high to give a good treatment. It's never going to be inappropriate with you, but more importantly, it's always going to give you exactly what you want. And we've been at this now, well, like I said, since 2017, and this is a milestone week. Yesterday, we just went into public beta.
What does that mean practically?
That means you can go to escape.com, you can hit a button, you can go get on the waiting list, and you can go get a massage.
In the city specifically?
Yeah, so we've started out with one partner location in Union Square, not at all coincidentally walking distance from our office. And we'll be adding more locations over the next few months as we then go into full commercial launch in June, which we'll be announcing on the 13th of March.
Awesome. Fady, I think you traveled the longest to be here, the furthest, is that right? Or you're
Area?
most likely, you're primarily Boston based?
Sure.
Okay. So I think it's good to start with you. One of the really interesting elements of this conversation and the fact that we're in this space is we're talking about communities, and we're talking about opening up startups in a specific geographical location, of having offices, of having people together. Obviously, a very hot topic over the last several years. Everybody's been going remote. A lot of companies have. In your estimation, how important is physical location?
It's actually very important, and there have been a lot of work and studies on how important kind of people to come together and work together and kind of chat together. And scientifically, I think it's out of question. It's important. We can argue how important is it to meet every day, considering the kind of time wasted in commute and maybe distractions and all of that. But I think there is magic in being in the same place with other people. So, for example, in Cybernetix, funny story, we started the firm and the fundraising just before COVID. And me and my partner, Mark Martin, we had to do all the fundraising virtually. All the fundraising for the fund, all the initial investments, everything was done virtually.
All the pitch decks over Zoom.
Everything. And when COVID ended and people started going back to the office, we didn't know what to do. We are used to the virtual kind of environment, but we ended up just our kind of firm policy is just to meet twice a week. And this has been working for us. But those 2 days, we try to make sure that we don't have any virtual calls. We just meet together, sit together on the same table, see each other, kind of chat, have random conversation. And it's really phenomenal. So from my experience, kind of co-founded Mass Robotics and kind of getting the organization to scale, we have experienced it firsthand, the magic in having a space where people come together, they eat together, they chat together. There is something there. And I think we as humans, we need this kind of energy interaction being in the same location. So I think it's very important. That's why places like New Lab, for example, is very successful. And the matrix is not, I mean, how successful companies come out of it. I mean, it's important, but I think how much cross-pollination you are making, how much connections you are making with people from different kind of perspectives, whether investors, corporates, entrepreneurs, service providers, and all of that.
There's an aspect of the VC job that is really serving as an advisor to a certain extent, especially for early stage companies. Is location specifically where these startups plan to plant their seeds? Is that the kind of conversation that you're having with them early on?
Like where to incorporate and where to start?
Well, specifically, whether it makes sense to open in Boston or a different area.
We didn't really, usually companies come to us and say, this is where we are. This is the kind of concentration of our network. What has been happening is companies might be at a stage where they want to expand to other locations. And this happened a lot with companies in Europe. So almost all of them, they see the US as their largest market. So, and most probably we would invest if they are interested to expand to the US, because this is how we can add value. This is how we can help them. So it came a few times that with those portfolio companies, they would say, okay, so where in the US should we expand to? And it would be very short-sighted from us to say, like, you have to be in Boston. This is kind of rubbish. You need to think in a very pragmatic way in terms of where are your customers, where you can get the best talent, where you can get the best services, where you have the highest chances of success. And believe it or not, this is not kind of consistent across all companies. It depends on which vertical you are in. So we have a company in Germany, for example, they automated the transport of scaffolding between different stories, a company called Coazo. And when they expanded to the US, they decided to be in Houston, because this is where they found a lot of kind of pull into what they're doing, a lot of utilities, oil and gas interest in building those kind of lift bot. And we said, fine. So this is really a company decision, what's good for them. We have company in Switzerland, they focus on lab automation, and they said, we want to expand. And for them, Boston was a natural fit because of the concentration of healthcare, life science companies, and so forth. So I think this is the pragmatic way to think where to go. Funny story, Eric, when he started his company, actually started in Boston, Mass Robotics. And I think eventually he realized that, you know what, the concentration of our customers probably will be somewhere else in New York. And obviously he moved the whole company to New York. And I think this was a very wise and smart decision. So I think this is how entrepreneurs and how investors also should think.
Yeah, that was the next question. Not just New York, but Union Square. So, you picked a pricey area to start a startup in. Why Manhattan specifically?
So I told Fady earlier that he's welcome to claim us as a success story for Mass Robotics. We started in Boston because that was my first connection into the robotics world. I've been building tech companies forever, but they've all been software companies. And as those of you in the room here who work on hardware know, hardware is a very different beast. And the ecosystem of people historically are born from the innovators who grow, they train, they create new opportunities, they create new businesses, those grow, those train, and you have a community. Those communities have largely been centered around Boston, the Bay Area, and a couple of other small areas in the country. New York hasn't historically been one of those. So I picked Boston because it was the first roboticist I was introduced to. We started in Mass Robotics. We had a very large hole in the concrete wall, which was just lovely in the middle of winter. And we built a prototype right up to the point where we had something that didn't look like a science project any longer and was something that we could actually get funding around. Now, you ask, why did we get to Union Square? There were a few iterations between ultimately where we got to in Union Square, but the reality is commercial real estate has been decimated in New York City, and there are a lot of really great deals to be had out there. We're paying basically what we were paying in Mass Robotics for 4 floors on a per square foot basis for 4 floors in a building in Union Square. The reason we're here, though, is number one, I live here, so it's just a hell of a lot easier than commuting to Boston every week. Number two, the confluence of dollars that are now chasing the applications of robotics rather than the technology of robots really aren't centered around the hardware centers any longer. Now they're domain specific, right? You want to go after consumer, you want to go after finance, you go to the areas where people who invest in those categories are. And third, we have found, particularly in a post-COVID area, that this is just a very attractive city for people to live in. And we've been able to bring in talent from all over the country who are enthusiastic, not just about the opportunity of working with us, but of being able to be in this vibrant, flowing, vital city that we all live in.
Yeah, obviously, and we will get to it. There are a lot of great universities here, but Boston, like the highest per capita. If you're looking to recruit people fresh out of school, it's not a bad place to be. Have you had similar successes here?
We have, although with the caveat being that we've hired a little more senior, so it's not a whole lot direct out of school for us. We've had a great relationship with NYU, with Penn, with CMU, and the folks that we find that want to be here in the city tend to be sort of mid-career, not yet kids, looking for change, looking for something new. But you know, we're now kind of all in. We're about 150 people, and I would say we have the same recruiting challenges everyone else does, right? We think we have a compelling proposition. We think we run a great business, and we think we have a remarkable environment to help foster people's careers. But there are a lot of people with that message, and there just aren't that many people that are well trained in the category.
Yeah, it's wild the amount of it's a good job to have fresh out of school in terms of the demand right now, and I've noticed it's one of the things that I like to do at the site is post job listings, and even at the most dire moments of the last few years, there have always been a ton of robotics companies hiring, so you will always be in demand with that job. Jackie, as somebody who was on the university side throughout the last 4 years, I assume that you made the shift from doing a lot of Zoom meetings to moving back in person. How does the dynamic change once you actually get back into the lab with people?
Well, I think that my experience is a little bit skewed because as a PhD student, I was working pretty much on my own. Not like there were some students who were working in very collaborative spaces and some students who were working just kind of more alone. So like there was this meme at the time, like a PhD student before COVID and during COVID, and it's just someone sitting at a desk. The same person, so that's like me. But then at NYU, I happened to be in an incredibly collaborative lab, and I think that's so I mean, we're in the medical robotics and intelligent interactive technologies lab, the Merit lab, and then you know my PI at the time was very much all about us all being in the lab all the time. So, you know, he wanted us there at 8 a.m. and full days, 5 days a week or 7 days a week sometimes for me. And then, I mean, because I wanted to, not because he made me. But anyway, so.
See here.
So, no, he's not. But so, yeah, so it was very collaborative and it was like right after the pandemic. So it was still a little bit like some people were trying to work remotely, but I think I was really lucky in that I was part of that environment where we were being encouraged to work collaboratively. And that was amazing for me. And I worked with like an army of master's students that were building soft robotics with me. And I was able to produce orders of magnitude more interesting research than I was alone as a PhD student. So it's been, I don't know if that's a good answer.
It is. Well, one of the interesting things when we spoke before that you mentioned is there's a way in which your research touches a lot of the different departments at the school. And it strikes me that in a lot of ways, it's easier to do that when you can be in a room with somebody.
Yes, well, that was at NYU. I was talking about my postdoc. Now at Stevens, I have the fact that we've been having so many events and community events. I've met so many amazing faculty members at Stevens, which wouldn't be happening if we were working, remotely. So, I mean, we have faculty members working, so many that are intertwined with robotics or other kind of STEM robotics related fields. So we have people in biomedical engineering, developing biomedical sensing, biomedical imaging applications, biomechanics for rehabilitation therapy, and all of that overlaps with what I'm doing, even though it's not robotics per se. Then we also have a drone lab where robotics professors are, working with testing drones indoors and outdoors. indoors, we have a full Vicon mocap system for those drones. And then 3 other professors on campus also have Vicon systems for their biomechanics work and looking at how is human movement happening, the same way we might use cameras to look at drones, use cameras to look at human movement and then develop exoskeletons or other assistive devices to help them. So there's just a lot of interesting overlap in the technology. We also have underwater robotics happening. We have these huge tanks that used to be used for hydrodynamics research in the Navy, which are now no longer being used for that. So now we use it to test our underwater robotics, which will one day go out into the seas and inspect our wind farms for us. And we test those robots in our indoor tanks as well as our outdoor in the Hudson River. And so there's a lot of different ways that robotics is intersecting throughout the university. We have the Center for Healthcare Innovation that's doing biofabrication, biosensing, biomodeling, drug discovery, tissue fabrication. Then we have the Center for Artificial Intelligence, the Stevens Institute for Artificial Intelligence, SIAI, where we have people doing machine learning and other AI research across many, many fields, but then the robotics community is part of that, and we can then benefit from all the AI happening within the university across computer vision, computer science, business. So it's an incredibly dynamic environment, and I'm just so thrilled to be there. I've never been, and I honestly, like, there's no other university I would rather be at than Stevens, because it's just the amount of interesting humanitarian application-based research happening across health and environmental science. It's just astounding to me. I have never seen it at any other university.
Harder.
What?
And the view.
Oh, and the view is ridiculously amazing. So like we're right on the Hudson River and we're looking out at Manhattan. So
All things you can't get on Zoom.
oh yeah, right, yeah.
Fady, when we look at the Boston ecosystem, there's a lot of interesting examples. I'm thinking specifically of the engine, of accelerators that are tied specifically to the university. From where you are, from the VC side of things, do you end up working directly with some of these schools when it comes to them starting to actually commercialize some of their research?
So the engine is in a specific, even though that MIT kind of like give the first push for the creation of the engine, and they kind of dedicated few millions for it. They ended up ultimately kind of spinning this out as an independent organization, started off as a VC operation, and now they have a whole kind of space and accelerator program. But the engine is really more or less an independent kind of entity now, which has a VC arm and an accelerator space. There is Greentown Labs focusing on clean tech and its pure accelerator model. And there is Lab Central focusing on biotech and life sciences. For us, it's a little bit tricky when you think of, one thing I forgot to mention is we focus on B2B robotics. So we're not looking at consumer robotics now for different reasons. And when you think of B2B robotics, it's very hard to build a company in the space and go to sell to large manufacturing companies or logistics companies or construction companies without having this know-how and this expertise and know how these kind of verticals work and how they make decisions, how they purchase, and do they use system integrators or they go for distributors. So there's a whole dynamics, there is a whole value chain in every vertical. So we found that successful companies in the B2B robotic space, they need to have some level of industry expertise. And it's not common to find those companies as a direct spin out from universities. So we felt that like most of the companies we look at, they are a little bit further down from that. So we haven't done a lot of kind of reach out to universities, getting engaged with their labs, even though it's intellectually very interesting to see what's being developed in the labs. And it might be something that we should be doing more down the road in order to give ideas about what the market is looking for and how these some of these technologies can be packaged for the industry. But it's a much difficult kind of process because now you are getting into a venture building exercise. It's not that you find a good company and you invest in. Now you want to go like up in the kind of the whole creation process and actually say, okay, you have a nice technology. We think that the market might do X, Y, Z, and you might use this technology to solve this problem. And then maybe get a founding team, recruit them. So there is a model for that, but this is a very heavy lifting. I don't think we are at this point yet. But it doesn't mean that every now and then there could be very interesting spin out coming from universities. And the founders are kind of realistic enough that they say, you know what, we need to partner with an industry executive or an industry expert to build this company. We have seen this in one of our portfolio, actually, a company called Real-Time Robotics. They spun out technology out of Duke University and a couple of professors and their students. And what they did is they went out and they recruited a professional CEO, a guy named Peter Howard. And this guy had multiple exits before he came in and basically he took the company. So I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but there is a way. And if it doesn't happen in kind of more or less this kind of approach, it become a heavy lift.
Yeah. Eric, how did you end up in massage specifically? It's, there aren't a lot of examples of massage robotics companies out there. So, in a sense, you're really entering a brand new space.
Yeah. On the one hand, I was looking for pain relief. I think the thing I didn't understand is how much pain it would put me in. I run a company that I wouldn't wish on an enemy, but it's also the greatest job. So it's that weird duality. I got into this quite literally to solve a personal pain point. I was suffering from chronic pain in my neck and back. I spent about 8 months of my life getting a massage just about every day of the week in just about every country you could possibly imagine. And it turns out it's really hard to get a good massage. There are well-intentioned practitioners everywhere, but getting them to actually do the thing that you want without the fluff, without their particular spin, without the, no, I'm not going to do that because I know what the problem is and I can fix you. The number of times I heard that and didn't get fixed. So it was literally in a fit of frustration one day that I decided I would go off and see if this was an automatable problem. And I thought I could do it in 2 years. And everyone told me I was crazy and they were all right.
They were all right. Yeah. So about 7 now, it sounds like. What, when you say, I assume somewhat tongue in cheek that you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, why has it been so difficult? What specifically?
If I were starting it today, I probably wouldn't have that perspective. Seven years ago, the world of dollars available to wild-eyed entrepreneurs looking to do things with very long time horizons without clearly proven markets was much smaller than it is today. Hard tech it's kind of hot right now, right? It's sort of sexy. And there are more pools of dollars willing to go after it. The earliest days of this, raising money for this business was about as much fun as unmedicated invasive dental surgery. And the good news is, as we've shown proof points over the time, and I would highly recommend this to anyone now trying to build a robotics company, as early as possible, create something that doesn't look like a science project. Don't make people have to look around corners to see the value of where you're going.
Definitely, if it's going to be operating massage on you, you want it to not look like a box of wires.
Especially that.
Yeah.
Especially that. Yeah. And COVID, as tragic as it was for so much of the world, an awful experience, it actually ended up being an accelerant that drove us to now a whole new set of human behaviors where it turns out people don't really want to be around people anymore unless it's a high value interaction.
I've had interesting conversations with startups in the space because, especially early on, for obvious reasons, people would tell me in like very hushed tones, like, oh, actually, the pandemic has been great for us. You don't want to say that because it's obviously a lot of people are suffering, but it sounds like between that and between the real estate issue that like, in a weird way, you kind of lucked out with the timing.
It's that, and it's also just the macro trend of the lack of availability of labor in high intensity service categories. There are easier and better ways to make money today than a lot of what were traditionally one of the only paths for creative self-deterministic individuals. That look, the market for massage therapy, I had no idea that it was this big, but it's about a $20 billion a year services category that wanted to be about 4 billion larger last year. There's just an open head count of about 30,000 therapists in the market and growing year over year as people want more massages and fewer therapists are coming into the trade. So, you see examples of this all across service right now, where there are definable, ownable niches where you can build something reliable that, to kind of a point I was making about what you were saying earlier, Fady, that's no longer robotics for roboticists, but now it's robots for real applications, where the fact that it's a robot really doesn't matter. That's no longer really the point.
Well, yeah, to an extent, but I wonder if you're still, especially at this early stage, as you're just launching now, whether people are still a little like, robot, like, are people still like a little kind of freaked out by the idea of a robot massage?
Look, I think every new technology gets adopted on a curve. And there are those at the very front end who are very excited and they'll try it no matter what. And then you have your segments of people along the way that are going to take time before they come to it. The good news is we're putting these into places where there's already a lack of supply and people want to take advantage of the service. So we kind of have a built-in model that helps people to get comfortable with it.
Jackie, I want to get your perspective on this. Historically, when I've talked specifically in places like, Pittsburgh, we talk about this concept of brain drain, which is they've got CMU there. And then once those people actually spin out and form their startups, they move to like San Francisco or Boston or New York, all these places. To a certain extent, there's kind of the opposite problem here in the city. I'm curious though, as we're talking about really sort of expanding the robotics startup ecosystem in New York, what are the schools that you've worked with doing to actually sort of commercialize and accelerate all of the research that's going on in the university?
That's a good question. I think that both NYU and Stevens have, these entrepreneurial sections of the school, which basically specialize in helping you get patents, which you're sharing kind of like 50-50 with the university. But they're doing a lot of the legwork for you when it comes to all the logistics work around patents and how you might, and then maybe like helping you even with creating organizing a startup company to some extent. I mean, I think NYU has some accelerator programs in that. And then, so with Stevens, it's amazing. For instance, we have a robotics master's program there. So even though the program isn't necessarily working to spin off companies, I think there's a lot of interesting networks that could be made here with this group with Stevens in order to allow for like a nice steady flow of master's students coming out of Stevens or PhD students or undergrads that are interested in these areas. But I think you have a really good point that like, whereas Pittsburgh had that brain drain problem, New York isn't going to have that. And so I think that we will continue to see this flourishing ecosystem building where students are coming out of Stevens and NYU and Columbia and creating startup companies and able to stay in the area and then build their network with other students coming out of that. And so, like for instance, Stevens has really been growing over the last 5 years. Like it's increased its research expenditures by 50% in the last 5 years, which is like really big. And 99% of that research is in STEM related fields. And so I think that there's a lot of, that's only in the last 5 years, and that like part of those 5 years were during the pandemic. So I think that there's a lot of room for that kind of opposite of brain drain to happen now that we've seen that kind of growth at Stevens. And I think, yeah.
Do you ever feel a sense of pressure in terms of commercializing or at very least focusing research on a product that like has a direct impact on people?
Sorry, say that again. So your question is, do I feel
in terms of, so for example, we were looking at the exoskeleton and, you can look at that and say, hey, I can see like a very real product here.
Yeah.
Is that an aspect of the research for you?
Yeah, I think it is. My inspiration in doing robotics is to create products that translate into, create research that translates into a product that can make a positive impact on people's lives. So whether that's physical therapy, rehabilitation, quality of life, other medical applications. I happen to be in health, in focusing on healthcare, but I also think, it's very interesting to think from an environmental science standpoint, how you can make an impact on the world. I've always been inspired by that. And so for me, this is a very exciting time now that, as you said, robotics is maturing past the point where it's just robotics for roboticists, but it's really robotics that can be really integrated into real world applications that are getting more and more ready for clinical or commercial translation. And so that's very inspiring to me. And so, as a first year professor, for the next 6 years, I'll be very focused on getting tenure. But then after that, I plan on being very focused on the ecosystem of spin-off companies and how we can, get that really, so I can see that the research I'm doing translated.
Hopefully you can do both.
Hopefully before, hopefully, yeah.
Fady, when you look at New York as a potential ecosystem, what do you see, what key verticals do you see emerging here in the robotic space?
I wouldn't claim that I know, but I think from our perspective, why are we engaged with New York? Why we are engaged with Jacob, Randy, and their team and this amazing organization they are building? Because we see there are the key ingredients for a cluster, a robotics cluster. Definitely, there are companies like Aescape and others. There's obviously concentration of investors and capital in the city. There are lots of corporates in the city and around, which is very important for building and scaling companies. So I think the ingredients are there. Specific verticals, I think those will evolve in the coming years. Like when we started mass robotics, we didn't really know. And basically it was like we let the market dynamics play in, and then eventually it was clear that it's manufacturing, logistics, construction, healthcare. So Jacob and his team, we had multiple discussions about like, okay, what are the unique verticals in the city? And I think they are also taking a similar approach of like, okay, let's set up the context, let's set up the environment for innovators and investors to come together and the corporates to come together. And let's see how this will play out. Is it construction? Maybe. Is it entertainment, which is actually a growing vertical in the robotic space? I mean, we all have seen the Boston Dynamics videos. For me, Boston Dynamics is more of an entertainment company than actually building robots that do stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have huge appreciation and respect for what they're doing. But when you think of the the revenue structure, it's really coming from entertainment and ads and being part of movie production and this sort of thing. There's also a company in Switzerland, Verity. They do the the drone shows, and I met with the founder, who used to be one of the founders of Kiva, and they are making millions from these shows. Like they don't need to do logistics or warehousing or any of that. It's just going to celebrity events, and they do the drone show, and they are generating millions. So maybe this will become a new vertical that New York is spearheading. I don't know. Maybe the I would say lifestyle slash healthcare that Eric is focusing on. Maybe this is a vertical that the city will own. Hospitality, maybe. So I don't know. But I want to add a quick comment on the last question about the brain drain. It might be true that the city doesn't have this problem of brain drain, but this is a dynamic problem, and it's very risky to be satisfied with what's going on. And unless the local ecosystem do these activities, initiatives, and actions, There is always the risk that when people start a company and they want to scale, you know what, I will go somewhere else because it's easier to raise funding, or it's easier to find talent, or it's easier to find service providers, contract manufacturer suppliers, and all of that. So I think it's really a collective effort from every local geography to make sure that they create the environment for founders and entrepreneurs to form companies and scale companies in the same city. So it's really a dynamic problem, and no one should settle for what's going on now.
Yeah, as it pertains to this space, I was speaking to somebody earlier about the involvement that specifically the city of New York has, why this is an important space to them for obvious reasons. Eric, when you were looking at moving here, are there any, I don't know if incentives is the right word, but do you feel like the local government is doing enough or could be doing more to foster innovation in the city?
Yes, so we looked at a number of the innovation zone projects that were happening at the time, and there wasn't a great overlap with what we were doing. They were largely focused on the repatriation of light manufacturing, and that's just not us. We design, we manufacture elsewhere. But I will say, in spite of that, and in spite of the high tax, and by the way, I'm using that term very liberally, just to describe the cost of what it takes on the soul, the wallet, otherwise to live in New York. The energy output that we get of the people here in the city is just very, very high and very high quality. People who want to be here tend to be highly driven individuals, and they tend to be people who are willing to battle a smelly subway. They're willing to fight through a crowded street, and they thrive off of it. So the incentives aren't necessarily the traditional government form of incentives, but I do think this city brings incentives otherwise that inure to the greater benefit of a business.
Yeah, I want to kick that question back to you, Fady, as well. As somebody who's worked with, helped found Mass Robotics, I assume that both Massachusetts and Boston played a role in that as well. What's your sense of, just broadly speaking, what governments can do to help both bring and keep companies into cities?
So it's an interesting question. So when we started Mass Robotics, we were a little bit naive. We thought that, okay, we'll build the concept, we'll go to the government will flood us with money, we will build an amazing space and problem solve. It didn't happen this way. We put proposal after proposal, and they didn't bite. Because it was a new thing. Robotics has this kind of stigma for politicians that there's always the challenge that robots taking jobs, and this is not a good message when they kind of run for election. So we had to make a hard decision and say, you know what, forget about the government. We have to do it on our way. And this is when basically we made the decision to go to the private sector and do the fundraising from corporates. So the trick was what's in it for the corporates and how you make a value proposition for the corporates to give you money to build the space and to attract companies. And there's obviously lots of benefits for corporates. So we changed tactics. We managed to convince corporates to give us initial money. Those became the founding partners. We started with this kind of crappy space that Eric mentioned, that like we did the painting ourselves, we cleaned the carpets ourselves, we did everything. And then we continued to fundraising for a nicer kind of space. And eventually we proved the model. We proved that there are enough companies. So we filled the space. So we had at that time probably 15 companies. We proved that corporates are interested. Probably we had 20 corporate partners. And the government looked at that and said, wow, it's really working. We don't know what you're doing, but it seems that there's some activities happening. So we'll give you more funds. So I think the government need to see some kind of validation, especially if it's a new idea. And then it becomes a public-private partnerships, and kind of everyone is happy, everyone is winning. But it really depends on different kind of state government, how proactive, how kind of aggressive they are in terms of their economic development strategy. So,
but do you think that things have been trending in the right direction at least?
Where?
Well, from you're having tremendous difficulty early on to now to,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
the boss and them actually
Yeah, yeah,
seeing it in action.
For sure, because these kind of activities, and it's also in any, I think, in any venture building or organization building, there is always this point of like an inflection point where there's a snowball effect. So you keep pushing, you keep pushing, you keep pushing, and then at a certain point, there's the flywheel kicks in, and it basically feeding on itself. And this is exactly what happened. Like the first few years in mass robotics, like I remember like every day from 9 to 5 back-to-back meetings with corporates trying to convince them to give us funding and kind of support the organization. And then eventually, once you have a critical mass of corporates, then I kind of slowed down and they are all coming to me and we would like to be part of mass robotics, which is a very interesting position to be in. And the same for startups. I mean, startups, they know that this space exists, they know the services, and then it's just kind of feeding on itself. And obviously, government organizations, they take notice, they want to be part of this success story. So everyone jumped on board, and before you realize you have more resources than you need.
Jackie, obviously you're thinking about funding in a different way, but you do have to think about things like grants. Do you find that there's been, when it comes to that kind of investment, that there's a growing excitement around robotics research?
Yes, definitely. And I think soft robotics is also a very interesting area. So I'm looking both into the NSF for more foundational, fundamental science around how, and I think my spin of it there is just how we can apply AI more and more to embodied systems, robotic systems, from a fundamental standpoint. And then the NIH, I will also be looking more into, since I'm interested in clinical applications, but then that might be a little bit later down the road because they're more interested in things that are more ready for clinical translation. But I think it's very interesting in both those areas to think about how robotics is just becoming more and more exciting. I think robotics is really at a point where, like you said, it's at this inflection point also in academia. Like I feel like, the technology is just growing so rapidly, so like 10 years ago, it was much harder for me to find like a robust software library that I could use that could like give me a working machine learning system that can just do what I want. It was always like build it yourself. And then like now you have more and more things that are just like highly documented in a really robust way and that have been tested, work well. And so you can suddenly take all these components and put them together in new ways. And a lot of these tools are open source. And so from an academic standpoint, that's very exciting. And so there's just there's a synergy that's starting to happen where we can just take all these different tools, because robotics is really just this melting pot of different tech, you have mechanical engineering, computer science, biomedical engineering, electrical engineering, you're trying to put it all together. So it's just this big systems integration problem. And then the more components in that system that are finally ready and ripe to be used is just, we're getting to that point now. And so it's a very, I think, very exciting time in robotics, in academia for robotics.
So you're exploring LLMs and generative AI like the rest of the world at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of maybe ways that we can use generative AI. I think in general, I just use a lot of different AI tools. Like, I guess I'm not always necessarily like looking to use like the most state-of-the-art cutting edge machine learning tool. I think that I like to use a lot of the traditional machine learning tools, but just apply them to hardware and just use a lot of tools that have been around for a while, but are now really robust, and then apply them to embodied systems, apply them to hardware, and apply them in like 100 different ways to like 100 different components of my system and see how they all fit together.
Eric, are we going to be using generative AI to ask robots for specific kinds of massages?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. You're exploring that world as well?
Look, I think we've seen a lot of hype and a lot of under-delivery of the promise of LLMs to date, but we also now see an opportunity for a new modality of interaction with computers, right? A new way of engaging that for some applications just makes a lot of sense. It's natural communications. In our case, you talk to a therapist, you tell them what you want. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they understand. maybe we could do better.
Great. We're actually out of time for this part. If we could open it up for a few questions. Does anybody have questions? We're bringing the mic to the center. We line up up here. Anybody? Any brave souls?
Don't be shy.
Not gonna walk to you. Establish it.
Hi, I'm Shiksha. I'm a recent master's graduate in robotics from Columbia. So I guess I have this question for Eric. Like you mentioned that the technology that you're using in your company. So you majorly hire people who are at the senior level and who are maybe up there. I don't know. So what is your advice or suggestions to people who are in New York City who are robotics graduates, who are aspirants trying to work in robotics? What is an advice for them? Like, you're freshly out of school. What experience should you be having before we can work in companies like yours and around?
It's a really good question, right? How do you get experience without experience?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's that way in every industry. My biggest recommendation would be to apply for the jobs that match your skill level. I can't tell you how many people we get that are not even graduated from school that are applying for roles that ask for 6 to 10 years worth of experience. And it just doesn't cast a good light on them. Sorry, I might have mischaracterized. We are definitely hiring people coming out of school. The preponderance of the people we've hired to get us off the ground were seniors. So we're certainly interested. You should definitely talk to us. Do you know what it is that you want to do? Starts with that.
Yeah, also why I was asking that is because if we don't start early, an experience that we want to have in the future, so we may not be able to reach there then if we don't start early. So that's why that question came. And yeah, answering your question, like what I want to do. So I just did mechanical engineering and robotic specialization. And I've always been interested in practical experience and like in the field than academia. So I guess I'm a new fresher trying to explore different industries, especially inclined towards climate tech startups. I also have been working at New Lab for like past 7-8 months. So yeah, climate is very special to me. Also interested towards the medical robotics, but have never really experienced that. And I would like to, but entry to that field is so hard because they require experience. And if the companies wouldn't hire you, I don't know how I'm gonna have that experience.
So we hire a lot of people both on the mechanical and the software side who don't come from traditional robotics backgrounds. Like, great mechanical engineers are great mechanical engineers, and a great software engineer is a great software engineer. Candidly, I would like it if more robotics programs would teach people to be more practical. They would teach more software engineering skills, right? They would teach the pragmatism of what it takes to be successful in a role. So if you're not able to find something that indexes deeply in robotics, I wouldn't despair. Robotics is only going to get bigger as an industry. There are only going to be more opportunities. Go find something in an orthogonal space, gain some experience, and then use that to leverage your way into a robotics role.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add very quickly, I think you should leverage internships, co-ops, if you have these options. This helps in kind of building your connection, building your experience. The other thing is there are robotics jobs, not necessarily in startups. So this is also another avenue that you can build your resume and experience. So you are you have built your own muscles, because startups are very hard.
Yeah.
And you don't have like time to catch your breath, and you just kind of jump and you need to kind of build the stuff. So this also could be a good option for
I guess experience is not the only barrier. I think me, especially being an international student and New York City being one of the biggest cities in the world with like people from all around the world, for us students especially, it's super hard because, the sponsorship and thousands of paperwork for the legal stuff is also one of the biggest barriers for finding any opportunities in New York City itself. So I guess as a fresher, it's hard to choose a city. It's like more for the career. So yeah. But thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm gonna-
yes, I'll be around.
So yeah, stick
Thank you.
around.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Michael. Primarily work in the drone industry. I heard the four of you actually talk about the drone industry today. Most recently with Amazon on the technical program management side, taking machine learning requirements from data scientists, translating to how we're collecting data out in the field, training how we're going to see and avoid. Another question for Eric. I heard you talk about a little bit pressurized air, I think, technology. Maybe I misheard. Maybe that's what you're talking about, how your robot senses the body when it's, you know, giving massage. And I was talking with some people before this, hypothesizing, how is your robot making sure that it's at the right part of the body? Are you able to talk about any of the technology that goes into your robot? Is there anything that would be RGB technology, heat sensing, FLIR, or is it only things that can't see with vision?
It's a great question. It's a great question. So we have a host of sensors that help us to understand the body and then create a complex computational model of the body. So we're not just stabbing in space. We know that this part of the body wants to be pushed and this other part definitely never wants to be pushed. It's a mix of depth sensors and torque sensors and pressure sensing capabilities all throughout, between external sensors and those kind of embedded in the ability to connect with the body.
I assume you want a bit of imaging though.
100%. And we've also, all of the treatments are clothed very intentionally. So you wear clothing so that you're not nude in front of a sensor, even though they're only depth sensors.
What kind of trial and error did you have before getting to where the technology's out today?
Well, let me just say, and I'll try to keep this short. In the earliest days, I was consistently voted least likely to sue the company. So I was the trial and the error. Back when we were just poking at things and we didn't really know what we were poking at. I ate the dog food.
Oh, very cool. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
sure. Thanks.
Thank you. For Fady, if you don't mind, and you could take either one, two things that are the worst way to work with venture capitalists, or two things the best way to work with venture capitalists from an engineer's perspective?
The best way is to understand what they invest in. So the way to think of the scope of each VC is stage. So what stage they like to invest in, what technologies they like to invest in, what verticals they like to invest in, geography also. So understanding like what the VC is interested in or focusing on is a good sign. The second thing is just be transparent, honest. It's an automatic kind of turn off if, as we kind of end the conversation or doing due diligence, we figure out that there are kind of things that are not transparent or misrepresented. So kind of answering your second question. And just know what you're doing in the space you are in and doing your homework.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, this question is for Fady. It's more on manufacturing, since you mentioned that you guys do invest in manufacturing. And I wanted to see manufacturing and robotics being very interlinked, especially nowadays with automation. I'd like to focus more on a little bit on metal 3D printing, and I want to ask what you think the next step in manufacturing, and what do you think the impact to manufacturing would have metal 3D printing?
I think this is part of a longer conversation, so we might kind of take this after the Q&A, but I think metal 3D printing is not kind of yet kind of carved out its own space, so there's a lot of stuff to be done there.
And in the same question, obviously, what do you think metal 3D printing needs to achieve in order to actually be to have a voice or a space in manufacturing?
Okay, so I don't think that 3D printing fits well within robotics. So that's why we have been a little bit kind of not really focusing on the space. So I wouldn't claim that I know a lot about like 3D printing, especially metal 3D printing, but we can have a conversation afterwards.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Hi, guys. My name is Hervé. I'm VP Lead Engineer at JP Morgan. And my question is actually for Jacqueline, based on her technical background. What is your opinion on AGI, artificial general intelligence, and how do you believe that we can actually reach that?
Is it NGI? you
No,
said?
AGI, artificial general intelligence, and how fast do you believe that we can actually accomplish that, technically speaking?
So wait, I haven't heard that term. How is artificial intelligence different than artificial general intelligence? Oh, how fast can we achieve generalization? Yeah, so, okay, that's a very broad question. I think it really depends.
It's a very hard because a lot of companies, even like OpenAI, are trying to reach that right now.
It's a good question, because especially.
Yeah, I mean, it can mean many different things. Like when you generalize a machine learning model, it can mean like that you're generalizing it, for instance, like when we're doing physical therapy, robotics, we're thinking about, are we building a machine learning algorithm that can work just on a patient-specific basis or be generalized to many patients? Then-
Exactly. It's just like a robot doing things like human, exactly like human, and surpassing them actually.
Yeah, and how close we are to that. Well, the question is like,
Technically speaking.
I mean, if that robot is doing 5 jobs versus 500 jobs, that's a big difference. So I think it's a very hard question to answer. I'm personally I'm actually very interested more in specialized customized robotics where you have robots that are kind of simpler and safer and cheaper and more affordable, doing very specific tasks that aren't necessarily replacing what a human can already do.
I think that's the right answer if anybody's don't think of the actual answer.
I'll take that. Thank you.
Hello. Michael, co-founder of Silana. We've built the first fully automated robot for fashion production. And we've just oversubscribed our first round and are hiring now in New York. And I wanted to ask specifically Eric, which tips could you give us for that process to bring the right people in for our specific problem?
For fundraising?
Not for fundraising, engineer hiring, different seniority levels to really bring in the suitable people fitting our team.
These are all people that I'm not going to hire, right?
Yeah. Well,
having a very clearly defined set of values and things that you stand for in the business is really important for attracting high quality people, and having a corporate culture that clearly embodies those values shows at every step of the interview process, right? You have the demand gen portion up front. How do you get people to know about you? How do you pull them in? That's a classic talent acquisition problem. And I would strongly recommend that if you're going to hire more than 15 people in the scope of a year, you should probably bring that in-house versus paying for outside recruiters. If you think you can do it without any recruiting help at all, that's great. You'd be very fortunate. But there's something distinctive about an in-house recruiter that makes a huge difference in the caliber of people you bring in, at least in my experience in the business I've built. Then you have the internal organization that's very much represented in the interview process. And most companies fail at this. They do a terrible job of conveying why somebody was going to want to be at this business 18, 24, 36 months from now. They'll way over index on the enthusiasm for a position and forget all of the other steps around that. So really spending the time honing and refining your recruiting process, you can't spend enough time on that. You cannot over index on that capability. And then making sure that people inside the business feel like they're rewarded, like they're safe, like they can collaborate, like there's accountability and transparency. So that when they're interviewing with other people on the team, because it's never going to be just you, right? It'll be a panel of people. Good people are going to want to talk to more than one. Their enthusiasm is genuine. They're infectious, and people can't help but want to be there.
Okay, to summarize it.
Happy to talk more about this afterwards. I'll be here.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Zane. I'm a first-year mechanical engineering major at LaGuardia Community College. And I had a specific question for Jacqueline. I know you were talking about how robotics, again, is kind of like a melting pot of different disciplines. And specifically, I had a main question about if you wanted to enter the fields, would you recommend mainly focusing on like a specific major, like in my case as a mechanical engineering major? Would you recommend just mainly focusing on the skills in your discipline, or mainly like a more like holistic approach where let's say you did some more like stuff in ML or electronics and try to get like a holistic approach of robotics and try to enter the field as someone more like a jack of all trades and compared to someone who just is more, less dynamic compared to just your major, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I think that, so I think like what Eric was saying is true, that like sometimes he's hiring people not necessarily that have a robotics background, but they're just like very good in mechanical engineering or software engineering or computer science. Now, with that being said, like within computer science, you have many different fields. You have machine learning, you have, biomedical imaging, biocomputation, you have, robotics is like a subcategory of computer science. Sometimes people say robotics is a subcategory of mechanical engineering. At Stevens, that's what we say. So I think that, I would say like for me as a professor, it's great that I got my PhD in robotics, but I think honestly, like from an industry standpoint, I probably would have had a, like, if, it's like, what kind of job am I trying to apply for? Like, am I trying to apply to be a software engineer or computer science at Google? It might be better to come in with a computer science degree versus just like a more interdisciplinary degree. So when you have a very interdisciplinary degree, I think it's great for startups. I think it's great for academia. For working for a large company, it might not be, you might be better off just specializing in something, but then also the landscape is changing as robotics comes more to the forefront. And I'm very interested in the New York Robotics Network in enlightening all of us as we go as to what those opportunities are and what kind of backgrounds are people looking for in robotics industries, and then maybe trying to create like a curated kind of report about that so we can understand more like what should students be focusing on. So I think that's an open question, honestly, and I think that it's a really important question for all of us as a community to really try and answer. And that's like one of the things I want to answer for my future. That one of the things that's most inspiring for me to be here today is to try and start seeking out those answers for my future students who come to me and say, if I come and work with you, what kind of job can I get in the future? So for me, that's like one of the most important, valuable pieces of information I can get from this community as I build my relationship with this community.
Thank you.
Hello. So I have an adjacent question to the previous one. I'm actually a master's student and I come with a background in biomedical and mechanical engineering. Now I'm in biomedical engineering department, but doing robotics concentration. Columbia University actually allows you to do that because I want to pursue my career in medical robotics and prosthetics specifically, which is 10 years from now, probably like the end point, because it's really hard to get into there. But my question is to Professor Libby, to Dr. Libby, when do you think is a good point to stop studying and start actually doing something? Because I want to go to the industry. And as I said, my background is in mechanical and biomedical. And then when I started doing robotics, I realized that I'm lacking so many skills: no software, no Python, no SQL, no data science. I could only build. I'm good at building, but I'm not good at doing something with what I've built. And robotics kind of asks you both. It asks you to build and then make it move. And I'm like liking low-key both. So when is it a good point to like stop studying and like be confident that you are prepared to go there to the industry and work with them? Like, when are you good enough for the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've like been struggling with the same question my whole life. I've been like jumping back and forth between mechanical engineering and computer science. So I got my bachelor's in computer science, then I got my master's in mechanical engineering, then I got my Ph.D. in robotics, which at Carnegie Mellon is part of the School of Computer Science. And then I did my postdoc hosted in the Tandon School of Engineering at NYU, which was more mechanical engineering and mechatronics. So I am trying to learn all of it, but I don't know if like I'm a good role model for everyone because I've definitely spent way too much time studying. But I think that it depends on, like, I think that right now, I think it's great that you're here tonight. And I think you should be like aggressively talking to people here about what kinds of jobs you could get at this point with your current experience and see, do I see myself at that job? Like, would I be fulfilled? Or do you feel innately that you need to learn those software skills in order to put it all together yourself? Are you fine just being the mechanical engineer and the biomedical engineer? Or do you feel like you need to also be the person that's creating the algorithms, that's creating the artificial intelligence, and that like you just fundamentally need to do that part? You don't need that necessarily for a job. For a job, I think you don't need to be all those people, And I think also like as a woman, sometimes we suffer more from this imposter syndrome. And so that actually also lends into this thing where you feel like you're never ready. And so you're never good enough. And then in robotics, it can be, you could go into this like black hole that I'm never good enough because robotics, so many things to do. So I mean, like, maybe like, if you try and have that kind of more male perspective, like, I'm so good, I'm so great. And like, I'm great, and then like, I already know more than all of you. So sorry, guys.
True, we are great.
Then you can like, just think of yourself more confidently that you are ready. But at the same time, if you do have that passion to learn the software, I would say you don't have to get a computer science degree. I think that like, for instance, at Stevens, I teach software engineering classes right now, and software engineering is very distinct from computer science. It's more about the application of programming to problems. It's just more application oriented. And so you don't need to get a degree in software engineering. You could just take 1 or 2 classes in that area and try and start using that to your benefit. And also programming and computer science and software engineering is becoming more and more accessible. So it's becoming easier and easier to learn these things without having to reinvent the wheel yourself. So I wouldn't be so daunted by that. And I think also I think it's also just a great, well-rounded education to be coming from biomedical engineering, mechanical, and then go into computer science for your PhD studies, or more like algorithm-based studies could be a great area, or still be in mechanical engineering, but more computer science oriented. Because I mean, a lot of times you have programming happening in every engineering discipline now. You can be like just sitting in front of your computer programming for your entire PhD, but be in the mechanical engineering department or the biomedical engineering department, because there's so much happening with software. So I don't know if that answers your question.
If you want to build, join someone who's building. If you want to continue to study, continue to study. So you need to choose. So if it's building, go and build. Even if you're not paid, go and build, because this is the way to learn.
Yeah, but it's like,
Sorry.
oh, sorry.
We'll be around.
Hi, I'm Yue Liu. I'm the founder of Anki. Okay. I'm Yue Liu, founder of Anki, Anki.ai. And we have a robotic carrying platform, and Anki is sitting by the post there. So I have a question for Fady, or maybe Brian. What do you see as the next big application in terms of home robotics? What's the next 1 or 2 you see that's going to break through? So far, we only seen, I think, robotic vacuum and robotic lawnmower. Those are 2 bigger categories. And drone, maybe you can count that also as robotics, but those are the only one so far in terms of consumer robotics. What are the next 1 or 2 big things you see in the next that's going to get to the millions kind of scale in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so you mentioned the lawnmower and the vacuum, which are like essentially the same thing, but in different spaces. I was talking to somebody about this recently, and if you look at the form factor of the Roomba, it's pretty much stayed the same. There's a reason why it was built like that in terms of like how it can navigate corners, but there's only so much you can do at that height when it comes to perception. There's only so much you can do. Obviously, stairs will be a problem without mobile manipulation. I don't want to say easiest, but the most immediate thing that can be tackled right now, I think, is
what we're now calling age tech. So assisted living, allowing people to continue to live outside of nursing homes and hospitals independently. Labrador, I don't know if you've seen their robot, but that's a good example. It's basically like a cocktail cart that follows you around and you can stick things on. Yeah. It's also a good space because obviously one of the biggest hurdles with home robotics is the price. We saw the Amazon robot for a few $1,000s. If you're able, and you're probably exploring something similar to this, if you're able to actually work with insurance companies, if you're able to actually sort of subsidize the product, or in the case of those actually working with some of these assisted living communities, and they can actually rent them out. So that's near term. Beyond that, it's really a matter of like what can be done with mobile manipulation, and that still feels like a few years off to me.
Yeah, I would say that consumer robotics in general is very hard, and more or less the same reasons that Brian said. The cost-wise, we're not yet at this point where we can make consumer robotics kind of cost-wise attractive. iRobot managed to do that maybe 15 years ago, and they have been having a hard time coming with a second act to the Roomba, right? And they got lucky with this use case because, yes, you can keep the Roomba cleaning all day long. So it's a very unstructured environment inside homes. So this makes it fundamentally very complex to design a robot for that. And then if you want to build it for one application, then again, you're kind of challenged with the cost problem. If you want to make it a little bit generic, then it's very hard to kind of navigate a home environment. So we haven't seen many successes in consumer robotics. I mean, even companies who had some early success, they kind of went bankrupt. So I think from all of the kind of data points that we are seeing, the time might not be right for consumer robotics now. Even huge companies like Amazon and Google and all those folks, they had a lot of successes in smart devices that are stationary. But once you start kind of moving around and all of that, there is still some kind of challenging dynamics, making this very hard to penetrate. So yeah, but yeah, I would love to see the robots. It's there.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you so much for your time and efforts. I'm Tarun, robotics grad from NYU Tandon. So my question is, as founders and entrepreneurs, what challenges do you face while establishing and expanding your business at a global scale? And secondly, apart from satisfying the job requirements, what expectations do you have for a robotics engineer in a general perspective?
Sure, I'll jump into this. I'll focus this on robotics companies specifically. So it turns out when you build things in the physical world, there are regulatory bodies that like to get involved. And those regulatory bodies don't usually talk to each other, and they are quite different. So getting yourself clearance to deliver something here in the US may set you up for success in some environments and may do very little to help you be successful in other environments. So there's all of that in addition to the normal challenges of growing and building and scaling a business globally. Sorry, the second question was, what do we look for in robotics engineers? Great, smart, passionate people who can deliver reliably and consistently. It's pretty simple.
Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Sriram. I'm an industrial engineer with a background of mechanical engineering. So my question is to Eric. I really like your idea, and from a fitness enthusiast, I know how it feels to get a massage after every session. So definitely it's going to hit the market very high. So my question is, how did you plan your supply chain and your manufacturing? Because you said the company is in Manhattan City, right? So I'm just wondering, like, how did you plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex beast of a product. Jackie said it best when she said the robotics is a systems integration challenge more than anything. And the systems involved, they're multi-sourced, they're multi-homed. Ooh, depends how atomic you want to think about the components. There are like the computers inside, those are off the shelf. Those are easy. Some of the sensors are off the shelf. Nothing else is off the shelf. Yeah, literally all of it. Whether we've taken something that was on the shelf and had to heavily customize it for our application or build it entirely new, it's a lot. So you have to have discipline. It really helps to have people who know and understand how to build supply chains. I wouldn't look like if you're looking to build up the competency, don't look for the unicorn of somebody who's done it in robotics, because the robotics part doesn't matter at all. You just want people that need to understand or are capable of understanding how to move things from one place to another, how to manage supplier relationships, how to mitigate risk, and who have a particular sensitivity to the sound and smell of dollars burning as they're sitting on boats or planes making it your way.
Thank you and all the best for you.
I do. Thank you all first for being here. Similar question. Are you guys tired of sitting and talking? No. All right.
No.
Yeah, we can stand and talk. Let's give a big round of applause for everybody. Probably kick us out. Okay. Yeah. So we're actually going to do community announcements next. I know we've had a lot of people ask. So same kind of thing. I'm going to leave the microphone here. Line up behind me that direction. You have, let's say 20 seconds. One question or one announcement. Don't rattle on. You started a bad trend. Right? Anybody want to do an announcement? Yeah, you're done.
I have a question for the crowd. Are there any space enthusiasts or space junkies here? Any show of hands? Does anybody know if Odysseus successfully landed on the moon? Yes? Woo!
Right. Who's next? Get up there. Don't be shy.
Hi, my name's Nikhil and I'm a current mechatronics and robotics grad student at NYU. And I have a background in electrical engineering, unlike many of the mechanical engineers here. And so I'm particularly focused towards health and product development. So if you have any kind of problem that you need a workaround, I'm the guy to talk to. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys.
Hi, my name's Patrick. I work at the Tonight Show, and we do a robotics segment, which I produce. We've had like Boston Dynamics and Carnegie Mellon robots from sort of all over the place. So if anyone here has a functioning robot that they'd like to demo on the Tonight Show, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brett. And if you work at a hardware company and your company has either recently missed a deadline or is at risk of missing a deadline, I would love to pay for your time. I would love to spend 30 minutes with you just hearing you vent. So please come find me and I will pay you for your time to listen to you talk about all of the things that went wrong.
What's up? Hi, everyone. I'm part of Avol. We work here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Am I yelling? And currently we're looking for a drone developer, specifically PX4 firmware. If you have some of those skills of implementing custom nodes or yeah, just fixing the firmware itself, flashing it and whatnot, and the simulations is a big plus. Starting from middleware to a higher level of robotics, please reach out to Avol Aerospace. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anton, founder of Silana Automated Fashion Production. We just closed our pre-seed round, 1.5 million, and we are hiring a lot of engineers right now in Newark, New Jersey. So if you need a job, you can talk to me or to our team that's right there. And yeah, happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rudy Weinberg, and I'm an electrical engineer with experience in mechatronics, electrical motor control, C programming for microcontrollers, and I'm looking for a job. So if you need someone who can help you with building robotics, programming firmware, anything like that, I'm your guy. So thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Guang Yang. I'm the senior PhD student in Stevens. And I'm working on the robotic. I mean, last couple of years focused on robotics, more related to the human robotic interaction, cooperation. And I have experience on mobile robot motion planning and computer vision, even the robot arm. And I like to share the opinions with the people here. And I like to discuss with you guys. If you have anything about technology, want to talk to me, I can discuss with you anytime. Also, I will graduate this May, so open to the work right now. If you need like the people have the work, because I think I have a couple, I read a lot of papers, know a lot of news still of the art technique, and I also build the algorithm by myself. If you want interest to me, I can show you what my work is. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Somik and I'm a grad student at NYU. Currently, I'm working in robotics navigation and autonomous robots. So currently, I'm looking for a job. So if you want anyone experience with computer vision, C++, Python, let's have a talk and thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Rishabh over here from NYU Tandon. I'm currently pursuing master's degree in mechatronics and robotics. I have a background in electronics and I'm currently working on in the AI4CE lab on a self-drive model car. I'm interested in pursuing a career in robotic perception and computer vision. So please reach out to me if you're interested.
There's still a nice line of people that want to introduce themselves, so just give it a second, keep the talking down. You're going to miss out on the most exciting part.
Hey everyone, I'm David Petricola. I'm the founder of Cohesive Robotics, located here at the Navy Yard. We are building smarter robots to modernize manufacturing's most common fabrication and finishing processes. Our first product is an autonomous sanding and polishing robot. We are looking for summer interns, particularly in perception or force control. So if you're a rising junior or senior undergrad or a graduate student, please reach out to us, info@cohesiverobotics.com. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Nishant Kumar. I have a company called Quirtech, located in New Jersey. I help startup with their embedded system development. I have a full-fledged manufacturing for prototyping. To do a quick prototyping and pilot projects. We provide services for making embedded system in wireless communication and robotics. Always looking for new and exciting projects to work on and collaborate. We do DFM for final product launches too. So feel free to contact me. It's Quirtech. Located in Cresskill, New Jersey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annie, and I'm a project manager by day and influencer strategy by night. And now we are serving clients from tech and synergy realm. So if you would like to grow your business with social commerce, please reach out. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Simon Gura. I'm a mechanical engineering student, a sophomore, looking for a summer internship. I've done SAE Baja, SAE Formula, University Rover Challenge. I'm doing some rocketry now, but yeah, I'm looking for a summer mechanical engineering internship. Thank you.
I want to thank you for having us here. I'm a computer engineering major. I have like the specialty in software and hardware to put them together. So more like an embedded system, like sensors with software and electrical. And I'm looking for a job right now. And thank you.
Hello, my name is Boaz. I'm an industrial designer and an entrepreneur. I have a project that is electrical shaver made for your balls. I'm looking for funding for that. It's 100% safe. And basically there's not a product like that in the market. So if you're interested, if you have interesting to invest in a project like that, contact me.
Guys, just quickly, we're looking for an electrical engineer to help us build a mouse. If you're looking for a job, just, reach out.
All right, you're free. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This was really fantastic. Look forward to more. And don't forget the survey.